There were a lot of things that happened in Russia in the past week. There were record snowfalls here in Moscow across multiple days. There were two massive festivals. We had Lunar New Year, or Chinese New Year as it's more commonly referred to here, and then obviously Maslenitsa, which is an ancient pagan Slavic tradition, or ancient Slavic pagan tradition, the crux of which is to consume massive quantities of blini, basically crepe-style pancakes. All of it was topped off with a 3-day weekend where the 23rd of February, Monday, was a day off in honor of Defenders of the Fatherland Day. So there were no shortages of videos to make content on. However, in the current socioeconomic and political landscape here in Russia, I kind of felt like I couldn't do that. In fact, I kind of felt like there was a more important event coming up. And that important event is today, February 24th, 2026. It is the 4-year anniversary of Russia beginning its war in Ukraine. Now, a few months ago, I had somebody in the comments write asking if I could make a video on what Muscovites thought about the war. And I thought that that was a pretty good idea. Got branches cracking back there. That's kind of fun. I thought it was a pretty good idea, and I was set on making it. The problem is I got sidetracked. I get sidetracked a lot, and time, keeps moving forward. And it got to the point where I decided maybe I'll just put it off until this day, until February 24th, when Russia enters the 5th year of a conflict that the Kremlin thought would be over in a few days. Now, I do want to, before I get into this whole idea of what Muscovites actually think, I do want to mention real quickly a few things that I think are important to talk about. First of all, I'm not going to be mentioning my own opinions in this video. I'm just going to be sharing what I have heard from others and what I have seen. Mainly the reason for that being that I'm a foreigner, and even probably more importantly, I don't meet the stringent criteria among Muscovites of what qualifies as a Muscovite. Beyond that, there was no way in hell that I was going to do some type of video where I went up and I was interviewing people on the street, because let's be real, in 2026, even for Russians, it's pretty awkward and suspicious to just go up to people on the streets randomly with a camera and a microphone and ask them their stance on political topics. So yeah, as a foreigner, I'm definitely not going to do that. And I think another thing that's important another caveat to put here at the beginning, I'm not a reporter. I just live here, I guess is as they say, right? I live in Moscow. I have my part of the city, my neighborhood, the shops I go to, the parts, like the parks here that I frequent, right? So I'm going to see the same types of people over and over again. That's the thing about anecdotal evidence. It depends on a ton of factors which are largely influenced by the character of the people providing said anecdotal evidence. But like any big city, there are lots of people constantly moving around, mixing together of different political beliefs and economic backgrounds, and it's a big city. People mix, and so if you're out and about, whether it be on public transit or in the shops or just walking down the sidewalk, you're going to, if you're paying attention, hear snippets of conversation, hear phrases, and catch the general mood and sentiment of the people around you, at the very least just through expressions in body language, if you don't actually straight up hear what they're saying. So to give you the TLDR of what I've come to see over the past few years here, Muscovites by and large are tired of the war. Even those who openly support the war and the soldiers, they're getting tired of the war, perhaps without even realizing it, as the price of said war comes home to roost. Over the past few years, but especially in the past 6 months or so, the cost of living here in Russia has just increased faster and faster. Nearly every single time I'm at the cash register in a shop, the conversations, if they are being had, between cashier and customer revolve around the fact that things are getting more and more expensive. Now, beyond that, outside of the shops, beyond the cash register, the prices of utilities have gone up. Taxes have increased, especially on small and medium businesses, and those might have a direct impact on the individual, but even if they don't, oftentimes those prices are going to get passed on to everyday people in the form of increased prices in the shops and just for services in general. And if at the start of the war, the military sign-on bonuses and monthly salaries of over 200,000 rubles, which were unheard of sums of money for many poor households and communities, and the type of money that would have been a game changer for many and would have perhaps caused them to support the war more wholeheartedly because of its clear financial benefit. As time has gone on, the ever-growing cost of life, from groceries and services to utilities and taxes to more expensive things like appliances or cars or even housing, that has all been adding up slowly but surely and has started to eat away at whatever monetary gain those people and those communities had in the early years of the war. All of this is to say that the current economic situation in the country is being felt by everyone, and the vast majority of people know that the culprit behind the current situation is the war, whether it be directly or tangentially. Finances aside, there's obviously the personal dimension to this war, with the most costly aspect of any war being the human aspect of it. Now, according to government statistics regarding the number of people who have signed contracts over the last few years, plus the men who were rounded up by the mobilization, that brings the total number of men who have been involved in the war in one form or another to around 2 million. Now, if you look into demographic statistics here in Russia, you'll find that the total population of males aged 18 to 65, which is the age span for those who are eligible for military service, that is a pool of about 44.5 million individuals. Now, 2 million out of that number is about 4.5%, which is not a huge amount, but it is still quite sizable, and that is a number which is increasing daily. Already, everyone I know knows someone either directly who has gone off to war or through another person, right? A friend of a friend type situation. And that's here in Moscow. Obviously, you can go to further out regions, more poorer parts of the city perhaps even, that is going to perhaps be a bit closer to home for a lot of people. I also have to throw in here that the total number of casualties meaning dead and wounded, is in the hundreds of thousands on both sides of this conflict. So of those 2 million men who have gone off to war, a fair percentage of them too have been marked in some way, if they made it back at all. And you can see this a little bit, hear it a little bit reflected on the streets, in the conversations of people, hushed tones, people discussing injuries or death. And while a lot of those conversations might still be connected to just regular passings and injuries that happen here in the city, I can tell you from personal experience that 6 or 7 years ago, I don't remember hearing that many conversations in the street. It has gotten to the point where, not to say that it's a daily occurrence, but it's also not an uncommon topic for people to openly discuss anymore, which is something worth noting, I would say. So the costs of the war, both economic and human, are causing fatigue to set in more and more with each passing month, each passing week. Now, just because people are tired of the war doesn't mean that they're ready for it to end. There are people who would be willing to just end it as it is right now, perhaps just draw the line as everybody stands on the map right now. There are people who obviously would be willing to undo some of Russia's claimed territorial gains, but there are also people who are ready for the war to end, but only if it's on Russian terms, which is effectively unconditional surrender of Ukraine. There are other people still who want the war to end only when Russia has reclaimed what in their minds are Russian historical lands. That could be as far as Odessa, or who knows, all of Ukraine in some people's minds. A lot of opinions out there on the internet, and obviously when it comes to this topic, there are also a lot of psychological factors, a lot of socioeconomic variables, state inculcation, and I don't want to go another 10 minutes into analyzing this and trying to make sense of this topic, because that's not really what I set out to do here. But it is important to keep in mind that even though fatigue has set in and people are tired of the war here, it doesn't mean that everyone is necessarily ready for it to end. Now, there are people out there who are going to have, I guess, different experiences, or I guess maybe say different viewpoints from me. And I will shield myself a little bit here by saying that with a topic as complex and multifaceted as this one, then yeah, you're going to have lots of different experiences, and lots of people are going to have heard and seen different things in their own lives. Again, as I mentioned, anecdotal evidence depends a lot on who is providing it and their own life, who they surround themselves with, and where they are in the city, things of that nature. But let's be real. You came to watch a 10 or so minute video here on YouTube about a complex topic, one that you understand is very messy and very complex. So, not necessarily to completely shield myself from criticism, but I guess what I would say is if you feel like I missed something or I didn't spend enough time talking about something, that's probably your problem. You clicked on the SparkNotes version, not a 3-hour long video essay, which is not something I'm quite ready to make just yet, especially on this topic. So to summarize, in my own personal experience, Muscovites are by and large tired of the war and they want it to end, but how they see an end to that war varies largely depending on the individual. В этот раз я не буду долго разговаривать по-русски. Скорее всего, в комментарии будут люди, которые категорично не согласны с тем, что я здесь сказал. Но пусть они ноют, пусть они жалуются. Я объяснил, что это всего лишь то, что я здесь наблюдал. То, что я здесь достаточно часто наблюдаю. То, что вы видите, вполне может быть другой. Это может быть совсем противоположность того, что я здесь сказал. Ради Бога, сообщите об этом внизу. Но сделайте это, пожалуйста, не грубо. Давайте вот так. Спасибо. All right, I gotta get out of the snow now. I guess I'm sorry I didn't make a fun video this time. One connected to record-breaking snowfalls, although, yeah, the snow is continuing, so I guess technically this may also count as a new record-breaking snowfall. Or the fact that I didn't make a video about colorful lantern festivals of the Asian variety, or even sort of quirky local traditions, right? Maslenitsa. But there'll be time for that in the future. I felt, first of all, like I said, somebody had asked me to make a video addressing this topic, and I felt like this was a good time. I also have a feeling that there really isn't going to be anybody else in the English language Russian YouTube sphere who's going to broach this topic, which is problematic, I suppose, in its own regard, but that's a topic for another day. So I did feel to some degree that, not that I had to do this, but that it was probably something worth me dragging my butt out into this snowstorm and recording it. So I also wanted to mention briefly too that there are a number of places I probably could have filmed this, but I decided to do it in the snowy forest, mainly because I was hoping that there would be something that by not filming it in the center of the city, that by removing a lot of the visual stimulation from the video, that what was being said would take priority in people's attention. So hopefully that was the case. I mean, at the very least, snowy forests are always nice too, in my opinion, and quite soon this forest will become an unnavigable mess of melted snow and mud, but I kind of wonder if that's going to be in the next few weeks or over a month from now. It does kind of feel like winter is taking its sweet time on the way out. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. You know, if you enjoyed the video, leave it a like. If you have questions, leave them in the comments. Honestly, if you're Russian or you're an English person, an English-speaking person, or just a foreigner who lives in Russia, and you have had, I guess, a completely different, how to say, you've had completely different experiences when talking with Russians about the war, then yeah, write that down in the comments. Like I said, that I think that's fine, it's valid. I'm just sharing what I personally have seen and experienced myself over the last few years. But yeah, leave your comments down below. Any questions, any things like that. Keep it civil, I guess is what I would say. And yeah, I hope everyone has a good day, good evening, you know, whatever time of the day it happens to be when you're watching this. But I'll be back soon. I'll do something a little bit more fun next time. But until then, this has been Russia in Context. Thanks for watching.